let's dive into it. Let's dive into this. Can you, Ibrahim, introduce yourself and let it flow?
All right, awesome. So my background's a little bit varied, right? I started the entrepreneurial journey early, like around 16. Did did some vapes, started selling electronic cigarettes when they first started back in like 2014. They really started early days. Um, Started buying them in China, selling them out of stores in the UK. Did that for about 5 years. And by that time, I was completing high school, started my master's in chemical engineering because I thought, right, you need a proper job. Even though the business was doing great, I was like, I kept getting the influence that no, this is not the life for you. You need to go down and be a qualified individual. So dropped that to complete the master's in chemical engineering, and 5 years it took to complete that. That was such a grind, man. It was a lot of it was like going against the grain. I recently came across this idea of people have certain types of intelligence where it can be something like music, maths, can be artistic, it can be maybe words and language, and we all have this predisposition, right? And trying to do things that go against this is really like going against the grain, where everything feels like an uphill battle. That's what a lot of engineering felt like. But I pushed through, and by the end of it, I got a job doing fucking formulations, sitting behind a desk, looking at numbers, and I was like, this can't be it. So against what everyone was told me at the time, I was like, I quit. I'm gonna go do door-to-door sales, basically grunt work, right? I was going to bars and clubs selling like phone chargers, and everyone was like, "This is absurd. You spent all this time." And some of the peers that I graduated with ended up in top engineering firms. Some of them go on to consultancies and stuff. And the comparison there was stark for me, right? To At that point to suggest that you know something or you're going in a direction that literally everyone else thinks is crazy, that took courage because everyone's telling you something against what you feel is right. I did that, and initially it is tough because you don't get training for sales either, right? In university, you don't get a lot of the soft skills, the people skills that I feel a lot of graduates come out with the deficiency in from university. So it was like my real education began at that point in the real world. And it was basically like straight into the deep end. I'm going to all these different bars and clubs, and these are people who don't have time to be wasting, right? You learn how to communicate, how to read people in an instant. And I would sometimes go to these places, and the first word you would say, like hello, hi, and you would kind of get a feeling for where the conversation is going based on their eyes, based on their body language, just the tone of their response. You would think, all right, I'm going to try this. It was such a high volume process because I would go to like sometimes like 50 places in one day. And I think we touched on this last time where
Mm.
a lot of the time, I think you mentioned there's a post on your Twitter where you're like, just increase the volume, increase the amount of something that you do. And this was the perfect avenue for doing so much of something that it became automatic. And that's really where I honed my sales skills. After that, I basically worked my way up the rung and started working in startups in London. Did some enterprise sales, working like B2B deals. Eventually got to a point where I was making decent money, but the fulfillment was lacking. I was like, is this all there is? Right? I was probably making more than most people do by the time they're in their 40s or 50s. And I don't say that to brag, but it was more to put into perspective where I thought, if this is the ceiling, where else do I go from here? And the traditional career path didn't have the ceiling where I wanted it to be.
Mm.
Um, this is I maybe gone in a little too deep there, Mike,
No,
but
that's fantastic.
is my mic clear? I just realized we're on the
Yeah, no, it's perfect. It's perfect.
okay.
Something that strikes me straight away is you go against the grain. You go against normality, right? It's so-called normality. And 5 years in uni, and like it's insane. And how long were you in that engineering role for?
1 month.
1 month?
1 month, man.
Bro,
Something clicked. Yeah.
wow. That's crazy. And
The Sorry to go.
the vape selling business, did that stop
Yeah.
after university, or what happened to that?
Yeah, I stopped that. I was like, I need to, because basically the degree became so demanding. It was so tough. There were multiple days, weeks, months where I was like, I should just leave. I should really just tap out because I just didn't enjoy the work. I didn't vibe with the rest of the people there. And a lot of it was just sitting at my desk, forcing myself to do something that I hated.
Yeah.
But you come out of that degree with this gambler's fallacy, thinking because I've spent so much time in it, I have to continue doing it, right? That's the number one thing that I think a lot of people hold on to when they consider doing something unrelated is that the investment in time has to pay off. But for me, the investment in time was the process to learn what I really wanted. Because I didn't know I didn't want to do engineering at the start of it. It just felt against the grain and felt uncomfortable because I didn't know there was an alternative,
Hmm.
right? No one had said, think about the kind of things that interest you. What kind of avenues do you want to explore? There was none of that. It was go get a decent job and then go work for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But I don't think of those years as wasted at all. I learned more about myself in that time, I think, than any other period.
Yeah. Wow. And that's pretty cool. But you were selling these vapes at a very young age. So it was ingrained into you very early to do something different, to be a little bit different. Like if
Yeah.
I was 16, I would have been like, no, I shouldn't be doing this. Stay in school, go to class and just be bored, learn nothing, fail my exam still, and wait till something is going to click one day. Whereas you actually went and took the action. Do you feel like that was almost bred into you growing up, or is it just the way you are?
My family's kind of in that business mindset, so I saw it around me growing up.
Mm.
But so my parents are Asian, and the Asian idea of business is you grind 14 hours a day, and then you commit your entire life to this business that consumes you completely. And so the um, the direction I got from my parents was, you don't want to do this.
Mm.
Business is good, absolutely soul crushing. It's strong, which I understand their thinking, but it comes from a place of not knowing that alternatives exist.
Mm.
It's either you kill yourself running a business, or you get a stable job and play it safe and be relatively unfulfilled.
Wow, that's crazy. And I suppose that's more of I guess, yeah, you kind of said it, more an older school way of thinking,
Thinking about business, yeah.
right? I know people in my family would have been the same, like generations above me. And most of my family just came from an ordinary 9 to 5 background, and I was kind of the different one that I felt like I always just had that drive for whatever reason to do something different, to be greater than the standard day to day that I can be from not even trying, right?
Where does that come from? Is it innate?
I think not having I was always like my mother always was able to provide everything I needed, but I always wanted more. And it's not materialistic as such. It's just maybe it's an ego thing. I just wanted to be more and be better. That's it really. Even when it came to sports, I wanted to be the best. When it comes to business, I want to be the best. So yeah, I guess it's the way I was brought up in a way drove that to want more. But I think some people have it in them already to have that drive. There's something that tells you you need to do more, you need to be more. So, and I come across a lot of people that have that. And even from the first day of us speaking together, I felt like you had that to an extremely high level. You're making serious life-changing decisions that to most people would think are massive gambles because you had a cushy
Yeah.
sales job and you were doing well in the big city, nice apartment, all that, right? but you're willing to take that risk, and that's what's super impressive to me. But one question comes from that. Do you feel like enough is never going to be attainable for you? Is there an enough?
It's hard to put myself in that mindset right now because the current goal is freedom, right? Freedom from having to think about how to survive, because survival is such a heavy burden on your mind. I think most people don't realize it because it's ever present from the day you become conscious of how the world works and how burdensome it is to survive day to day, rent, food, bills, all this stuff. And so you just assume it has to be a part of life. But my primary goal right now is to eliminate that burden and see what happens to my mind then. Because I think truly incredible creative work is done when that burden no longer exists. You then work from a place of complete abundance, right? There is no pressure for survival. And I think that energy gets redirected towards creating the best work you can do. That's what I'm currently working towards. And when I arrive at that place, I'll let you know what it feels like.
You will arrive there soon, I believe that. But do you think then, if we look at humans throughout the last thousands of years, right, we've grown to this point and developed to this point due to survival instincts and being put under severe pressure, life-threatening pressure. Now, our problems in modern day society are so different. It's nothing compared to what, say, our ancestors had to go through. Do you think if we were put under enough pressure, you could become greater, or do you still think you need that fully relaxed mindset and then to become creative?
There's so in there's like this old Chinese general, right? And he had this strategy for getting the most out of his soldiers. In cases where his army was massively outnumbered by an enemy, he would put them in positions where they had no retreat. So he would put them with their back to a river or between a mountain, so they had no escape. And in those moments, his army would defeat an enemy that was massively outnumbered. And he recognized that if he gave his soldiers no opportunity to escape, no way out, they would die to win. And it worked in those instances. It's hard right now because you have to manufacture those circumstances by yourself. That's why I did this. That's why I quit my job, right? I tried doing it part-time, looking at businesses and doing a bit of work on the side. And often I was like, well, if I don't work on the business, I get to continue living my very comfortable life. It's dissatisfying, but I'll be fine. So I have to manufacture the circumstances necessary to get to my goal.
Yeah. So there's two stages there, really. There's that putting your back against the wall and having the ultimate trust and faith in yourself to succeed and to get to a level of where you have that abundance of everything, of wealth, freedom of mind, all that. And then you get into that creative mindset because you've had your back against the wall. You've done that. You've been there. You've created that success, and then you can become truly creative. And I get that to a certain extent. I try always have the feeling of my back again is against the wall. I wrote a tweet this morning. I scheduled it in for, I don't know, sometime later this week, and it was essentially that I love the stress that comes with all this. In the moment, I hate it. I feel like I hate it. But when there's no stress, I'm like bored. It's weird. And I'll be the first to complain when I'm under pressure and shit's going wrong. I'll complain to everyone around me. But when there's nothing going on, I'm just literally bored. I don't know what to do. So it's weird the way the mind works. You want peace and quietness, but do you really? I think we're built to be put under pressure, some of us, and to achieve more from that.
I think, yeah, fully agree. I think this ties into the bit you were saying earlier about having that innate ambition and drive. I think this is the other side of that coin, where that ambition and drive is only really accessed or harnessed when the stress or pressure is there.
Yeah.
Right? I've been thinking about this because sometimes things are so stressful, and I'm like, it sucks, but I kind of love it. You know, the that visceral feeling you get when things are so difficult. And in those moments, sometimes in the past, I didn't used to be like this. I used to just like let it consume me,
Mm.
and my mind would be unsettled, and I'd be racing to try and put out fires. But my approach nowadays is to sit with it, is to like lean into that pressure and that stress and that discomfort, because then it kind of reveals something about me. It'll tell me, yeah, this is good, right? I That's actually my knee-jerk response in a lot of these cases. It's now something bad happens, and my first thing is, good, now what?
Mm.
And it's a simple reframing that says, all right, are you gonna? It's an invitation to rise to the challenge.
Yeah. Whereas most people panic and make the wrong decision on emotion. And where did you learn all this from? What, like, where do you drive or get your inspiration and motivation, all this from? Is it people? Is it material? What is that?
And I read biographies a lot. Um, I think for people who don't have, because ultimately, like to frame it, I think your environment dictates who you are pretty completely. It's really hard to outgrow that environment or to be something other than what your environment dictates. But your environment doesn't just have to be your physical surroundings, right? Because people grow up in poverty or in really challenging circumstances and still break that ceiling. But I think what they do, they cultivate their environment in their mind and through the material that they consume and the thoughts that they have. So a lot of the things I do is think about, who am I surrounding myself with either digitally. So I'll read about people who have done extraordinary things, athletes, businessmen, um, things like that. And then I think the thoughts also dictate my environment. So I police my thoughts very carefully. A lot of shit is not allowed. One of the big ones is self pity. That is a complete no go. There's no circumstance in which I'm allowed to feel sorry for myself, because it's such a negative spiral where you feel bad about yourself, and then you feel less capable to solve the situation, and then it feeds back into it, and your world kind of just shrinks in. So I try not to fall into those kind of traps. But yeah, going back to the question, biographies I like, books, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Are you a social media guy? Like, do you take in, say, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all that?
I only watch YouTube, and that's usually with a purpose. So I don't have any social media until I started this. Didn't
Yeah.
have social media, and I realized, okay, now I need to do this. So that's been a challenge. I'm trying to balance watching content with the purpose of studying and looking at what people are doing, between just watching content because it's like junk food for the brain.
Yeah.
It's hard to balance sometimes, right? I'm like, I get hooked because I'm like, damn, I don't know where the past half an hour went. I was just watching these stupid things.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how addictive it can become? And it's fascinating. If you sit there, let's say you're sitting next to someone and they're watching TikTok or Reels, whatever it is. If you actually just watch at how fast they scroll through everything, it's mind-boggling. I've programmed myself to try and only take in as much educational content as possible, and that's primarily with YouTube. So when I see someone next to me scrolling on TikTok, I haven't even seen the caption of the video, that what even the video is about,
This is it. I
and
fully relate.
bro, they're 3 videos later, and I'm
I
still trying
know.
to figure out, like, it's insane to me. So I'd
I see what
rather
you mean. Oh,
sit.
I'm watching these this Instagram reels with a friend the other day.
Yeah.
They'll scroll and it's taking me 3 seconds to process what's on the screen, and they've already gone, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, I didn't even see what that was.
It's crazy, and that's the way, unfortunately, most people are. And look, there has to be those types of people as well, right? There has to be the doom scrollers that get consumed by it, and then there has to be the creators. And I tweet about it a lot. You need to stop consuming and start creating. And if you do that, and if you turn that into the habit, that into the addiction, you will go places. Even if you don't mean to go places, if you're uploading every day on a preferred platform, you'll make it at some point. No question about it. It might even take, if you're not purposely trying, it might take years, but you'll create something out of it. And if so, turning that into the addiction is far superior. I think YouTube's a great place to learn. A lot of people put great content out there, especially small YouTube channels. But it's so easy to get consumed by the fun, exciting things. Absolutely.
I know it's like a candy store, and I recognize my brain doesn't have the willpower to resist all
Yeah.
these things, so I
Most
don't
people
take
can't
that fight
recognize,
every day. Yeah.
you know. So it's yeah, it's unfortunate, but like even for me, I deleted everything when I started Twitter, posting on Twitter and starting the business. I deleted TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. I probably kept YouTube, I would think, just because it's so educational if you're in the right places. But as for those other platforms, until I started uploading them and creating on them, I deleted them. But even to this day, when I'm uploading a TikTok or an Instagram video, I might open the app and something takes my mind away from the action that I need
I
to.
know, man.
It's insane, and it's powerful to be able to recognize it though, and you've the appreciation that you will get hooked by it, so you can try and avoid
Yeah.
it in the first place.
It's like the alcoholic who doesn't walk past bars on the way home
Yeah,
from work, right?
yeah,
Like, why would you take that fight? Sure, you might be able to
so
resist, but
true.
it only takes one day where you're a little bit extra tired or something just catches your attention more than usual and you're gone.
Yeah, and 30 minutes later, you're like, oh, I had something to do. My lunch is gone.
I know.
So yeah, that's the way it is. But what is your goal in not financially, but your goal in the next year? And not saying just that freedom, but where do you want to be? Where do you want the business to be? What way do you want to be helping people and kind of what do you want to be providing exactly?
I want to just do a closing point on this thing we were talking
Yeah.
about content and watching stuff, um, which is I came across this idea about if you consume. Actually, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and say the edge that we have, right, is is basically defined by how different and unique you're able to be compared to what's already on the market, right? The people who are usually most different identify the gap, and they can then I won't say exploit, but harness it, right? So people who have really unique personalities or very different takes on certain topics, those are the people that gets most attention, or they have cool business ideas. You notice that it's a very different perspective of looking at things, and they are the ones who tend to perform the best or are most capable of getting what they want. And so I think to achieve that, or how you get to that place, is sure everyone is ultimately very different, but the content you consume shapes how you think, right? And so if you're watching and consuming the same thing as everyone, naturally you will end up thinking and being like everyone. This is only something I recently started thinking about, which is if I watched all the big creators, if I read all the popular books, my ideas and thinking is gonna mesh with everyone else's, and my distinction, my edge is gonna get blunted,
Yeah.
right? So now I'm starting to read and expose myself to smaller creators, less well-known books, so that I have bits of knowledge that are far less mainstream, so
Yeah.
that it basically sharpens that edge, and where my advantage is gets bigger because now I have access to information or perspectives or ideas that the majority of the market doesn't.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I'd be very much the same where possible. I think a lot of the big accounts and creators, while they know well what they're doing and they have a lot of the knowledge that the smaller ones do, they're appealing to the masses
Yeah, that's
in
it.
in a way where it's educational, it can be good, but they know what they're doing. They want to sell to hundreds, thousands of people, and that's it. Right? That's fine. But I think when you're more niche sometimes, you can have more of a cult like following in a positive way and actually drive a better life for yourself and a better business. So there are
What
two
do you
angles
think
there.
it's what do you think it makes that cult-like following in the creators you've seen?
I've been studying this a lot recently. because I find people with around my size following, so around give or take 30 to 150, 200K followers on platforms. They, while they may not go viral constantly, like the names we all know, their conversion per follower is really high, and their loyal fan base is extremely loyal. And I think it's from being, and I'm talking about this more in my content, I think it's from being really true to themselves, true to their own views, not caring what others think, not caring if people like them, dislike them. And it's something I feel like I don't have that level of following as much as others, and I want to have that more. So I'm actively going through activities to bring out my thoughts, my ideas, my personality more, and just actively post it
What
because
kind of activities are you talking about? Like,
AI, ChatGPT, and it's the it's the AI age, but the AI race. Now, with that, I'll essentially tell it what I want it to do, right? I want it to create controversial topics, come up with controversial topics on wealth, health, life, all this, relationships, all this, and ask me those controversial questions. And I'm going through a document at the moment. There's maybe 300 questions, and I'm just answering them. And what I'm going to do is turn all that into tweets, into content, into videos. So if we look at, and if we do go more mass market, the certain people that have done extremely well because of these views, because of these extreme personality traits, are the likes of the Tates, Trump, these types, right? And not that I want to be like them, but I think you can definitely take a piece from their puzzle and understand how they've done it, how understand why 50% of people love them, but 50% of people hate them. But that engagement in the comments brings them millions of views, millions of dollars every single month. So that's the route I want to go down a little more, but I want to make sure I'm true to myself. I'm not making up random crap to get clicks. I'm just literally putting my personality out there. And I think that's something you'll do as well.
can you give us a sample of the responses to some of these controversial questions?
Let's do it. Let's do it. He's getting me at the deep end. Let me get the Mike's core beliefs. Right? That's
Oh, this is gonna be good. I hope you start with something really misogynistic. That's gonna be great. Women should not be allowed out of the kitchen.
correct. Right.
Clip that.
Clip. Okay, so first one. I'll just literally go one to whatever. Let's both answer.
I'll hit I'll hit the buzzer when I think you've hit on something good.
Okay, the first question. Do you think some people are just destined to fail no matter what? And let's both answer it, right? So my answer is to a certain extent, yes. But I believe it's because they've already given up or are else too ignorant to see what's possible. What do you think about that? Do you think some people are just destined to fail no matter what?
So I came up with this thing, right?
He's
Which
avoiding
is
it.
no, I'm gonna give you a direct answer, but I want to contextualize it a little bit,
Yeah.
which is that man is most free when he has no choice, right? This is a new idea I've been thinking about. So we do what we do in this entrepreneur space and building something new because this is really the only option for us. Can you see yourself going back to construction or working a regular 9 to 5? Can you do any of those things? Is that an option for you? Right?
Hell
It's
no.
not an option. This is the only thing that's really a viable option for you.
Yeah.
Would you go so far as to say that this is your fate, that you are destined to do this? That if there's no other option and you must do this, would that fall under the definition of fate?
Mm.
Right? And so my logical extension is you are destined to build this business and take it wherever it needs to go. Right? That for me is like a relief because now I don't have to think about whether I'm making the right decisions or not. Right? I have no choice. I am fated to go down this path. This is what I must do. And so the inverse of that is inevitably some people will be destined for nothing,
Yeah.
where they don't have the choice to do anything meaningful or worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you said it in a nicer way. I think we can agree. Another one. Let me hit you with a couple more. Is self-discipline something? This isn't too extreme at all, but maybe I'll look for some better ones.
This is great. This is like an internal doc
Yeah.
that if it ever gets leaked, Mike's
True.
reputation would be ruined.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is victim mentality a real thing, or is it overused as an insult? I think victim mentality, I see it all the time as a very, very real thing that I think people rely on too often. It's an easy escape, it's an easy way out.
I take this to the extreme, right? And I've got a great story to demonstrate this. So I was in Turkey over last holiday, and through some unfortunate series of events, I ended up in a Turkish prison because of some confusion with passports and getting mistaken for a wanted criminal, right? Now, I was telling my friend this story and in reference to victim mentality, right? And she was saying, "You're a victim of some circumstance there." And I told her, "No, I wasn't." I said, "If I had known I was going to a country like Turkey, I should have learned more Turkish, understood the local laws, and been able to talk my way out of it. There was no way I was a victim of anything there. That was all my fault." And she was mind blown. She was like, "That's crazy." That is the extent to which I look at the things that happened to me in life. Never a victim.
It's the ultimate self accountability, essentially.
But like that is empowering to me to know
Yeah.
that I could have done better, right? Because now in the future, when I'm hopefully not in another Turkish jail, but I'll think, all right, I'm going to anticipate what might happen. I'm going to take the steps necessary to avoid it.
Interesting. Interesting. That's a pretty crazy story, though. Content in
Yeah,
itself to talk about that.
I know. I'm gonna flesh that out a little bit,
Yeah,
and I think that could have a good like turn into a good parable.
agreed. Agreed. um, yeah, so next one. Do you think extreme success, I still feel like these are a little soft compared to what's coming up, but do you think extreme success requires some level of selfishness? To me, and I've had these difficulties with the people around me, where it's clearly obvious that the business comes before anything, and the success of that becomes before anything. And it's not me. That's the thing as well. That's where a lot of people get confused. The selfishness is not to me. It's just my physical presence being selfish to the business, because that's what feeds everything. Like when I have a family, they only eat if the business is eating first, right? And it's making money. So
But does the business need to hit 7 figures for your family to eat?
maybe not. That's a fair point. That's a good point. Shit. But at the same time, it also gives them, so I'm trying to defend that. It gives them an opportunity to have that freedom to never worry. But at the same time, I fear that, or I believe that you need struggle, you need difficulties growing up as well, and to be faced with those challenges to grow and become something of yourself. So to me, I do believe I'm gonna find it hard to have the balance, say for my children in the future, God bless. But I need to myself build something great. I know that for sure. I've I had endless conversations with my girlfriend about it, that I just feel that I can't leave myself even where I am. There's so much more in me. There's so much more greatness. And I don't know what that is. Maybe I'm limited at, let's say, 500k a year. Maybe my limit's 10 mil. I don't think there is a limit to an extent, but it's a knowledge, it's a lack of knowledge that will limit me essentially.
I don't think it's a. I don't actually think it's lack of knowledge. I'm gonna
Mm,
have to disagree with you, Mike. I actually think it's you become unwilling to pay the price to go to the next level.
mm,
I think at each stage it reveals something about you, and you have to. Most people do it subconsciously, but they're like, I'm not willing to do what it takes to get to the next level. I'm not willing to make the sacrifices or make the changes internally or do that internal work to let go of limiting beliefs. Or I think like the way I've seen it play out in companies is, the, especially with founder-led businesses, is they don't hire external staff because they don't have confidence in other people to run the business as well as they want. That tends to be a ceiling. Or they can't trust themselves to manage other people. Again, more internal work. It's very rarely a case of there's an external barrier like knowledge or some other factor that stops you getting there. I think it always comes down to you're unwilling to do what's necessary to go to the next level.
mm. That's interesting because I felt like I hit a level, I hit a ceiling, and everything that I was doing was only bringing me to that certain point. So that's why I'm actively doing
Oh,
these
that's yeah.
activities essentially to bring myself to the next level. And that's literally why this conversation was brought up and we're having it, to bring myself to the next level. And you've done the exact same thing recently, right? You made a big change in your life. You're taking a
Hold
step
up, I think I
back
might
to,
have something that perfectly kind of captures this point you made.
yeah.
I've got this I've got this graphic, right?
Yeah.
And oh yeah, I think I got it. Yeah, I got it. this this is just gonna be perfect for what you said.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second, I'm gonna pull this up.
Go for it. Go for it. Take your time. I'm eating my Biscoff biscuit in the meantime.
Like, what is this diet? We gotta fix this.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen here. So this is something I use with the guys I'm coaching, right? Because it's a very common thing to be hitting the ceiling, right? Is that working?
Yes, sir. I can see that.
Right. So pretty much everyone's existence falls between these two ranges, right?
Mhm.
Every single thing you do falls between a ceiling and a minimum standard you won't go below. And this applies to things like finances. That's the obvious one. Most people's bank accounts will oscillate between these maximums and these lows, where you'll hit a max where some limiting belief will stop you from getting further, or you'll self sabotage because you think, all right, this is as far as I can go. And then it'll drop down to something where you're like, oh no, I need to get my shit together. So for most people, that can be like hardly any money in the bank. It might be like 10K, whatever it is. They're like, okay, now I need to save up again, need to work on build up and the
Yeah.
work between those. But it also applies to less obvious things like the cleanliness of your room, right? You'll notice you'll get it really tidy one day and it'll slowly start to degrade. And it'll get to a point where you're like, I can't deal with this anymore. I need to tidy this shit up. And it'll
Yeah.
go back up to the top. It applies to physical appearance as well, where you're like looking a little scruffy one day. You're like, I better clean my shit up. And you'll get it back up to that standard that you think you're acceptable for, and it'll drop back down. And it's so funny once you become aware of it because you notice it more often in the things that you do day to day, and then you can try and break out of those limits. A lot of the time, the big thing that people will benefit from is just eliminating the lows, right? It's
Mm.
just to reduce that minimum baseline. Because when you think about it, when you get to that low point, not only are you wasting time going down, but now you got to waste that time coming back up to baseline as well before you start to climb to a new peak. So if you can just eliminate a lot of those lows, statistically, you spend more time climbing and your oscillations get much narrower and have a higher trajectory.
Wow. That's like very revealing in a sense.
Have you noticed those patterns in yourself? Can
Of
you?
course. Well, now that
Yeah,
that it's shown to me, right?
yeah,
Like even if you go as simple as a haircut, like it
yeah.
gets to a point
That's
you're
a big
like,
one.
man, I need to get the haircut, and
Yeah,
then you're fresh, and then it goes slowly back down again,
that's
which
it.
is
And
that's just such a regular
those
thing.
limits are standards, and
Yeah.
that's why I try and work with some of these clients that I help. Is I say we need to up your standards, right? You need to tell yourself that what your ideal version wants is now your minimum standard.
Mhm.
Anything less than that is unacceptable, because we will tolerate so much day to day. We will accept shitty jobs. We will accept bad relationships because we feel that's what we deserve, because that's our standard. And so, if you raise the standard on what you feel is acceptable, on what you feel you deserve, it applies across the board. And naturally, you will only let in things that you feel are worthwhile.
Do you think it puts people off when they feel like they can't raise that standard?
I mean, you got to think about why people would be unable to raise that standard.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's because of some belief that they don't deserve something better
Mm.
from some past experiences that tell them, "Oh no, you don't deserve to be successful or rich or even in a healthy relationship." That's usually the big one, where
Yeah.
people's partner choices tend to reflect the standard that they see themselves as acceptable in. So they will tolerate disrespect, they'll tolerate unfaithfulness, they'll tolerate all this stuff because that is ultimately what they believe they deserve. And I find it really funny when people badmouth their partners, right? When they say, "Oh, my wife or my husband did so and so," and I always think, but that means this is what you're accepting. This is what you've tolerated. So it's just a reflection on not on her or on him, but on yourself, because this is now what you've come to believe is okay to have in your life.
Wow. And of course, we everyone knows most people's standards with a lot is it's critically low, right? And they're very accepting of what they're just dealt at very basic levels, whether that be partner, job, income,
Did
physically.
did because obviously your financial situation changed drastically
Yeah.
when you became an entrepreneur. Did that reflect in how you saw other aspects of your life, like relationships or physical appearance?
I think my Whew, good question. I think relationships, my standards definitely went up, but I felt it was because I struggled to have, and we've kind of spoken about this before, but I struggled to have regular conversations almost with people. The mindset was so drastically different, even after just 6 months in business. Everything changes in your mind. And even your income, you look at the money in your bank not as, and I know you can relate to this, you look at it as, oh, 2 more months I'll have 10K in my account. You look at 10K in your account as, oh, I have 3 months to live.
Yeah.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
it's that way for a long time until you've a large sum of money in your bank. Or until you've investments that are paying you day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. And the first 6 months of building my business was, well, about half of that I was stuck in my job. So it physically, my appearance, all that suffered. I had to really make a choice. I didn't have the option to leave my job. I just simply didn't have enough money. Well, I suppose I did looking back on it after how quickly it became successful. But at the time, I thought I didn't feel like I had that option. I had a comfortable, stable job, just like yourself, right? And uh, time with family, time with my partner suffered. I didn't really have time, and I didn't really have time for the gym very often at all. I didn't really go for the best part of 6 months. Didn't even walk. I thought walking for 20 minutes was a waste of time. I was extreme. And in hindsight, I probably should have given myself an extra hour a day just to
Yeah.
keep the health there. I was on microwave meals to save 20 minutes cooking, right? All this. Pot noodle every single day, multiple times a day.
Oh boy.
Yeah, crazy, right? You'll judge me for that one. But
You do what you
that,
got to do.
that's the way I felt, right? And in the end, 6 months later, realistically, is when I kind of started to get out of that hole. But I felt like that's the sacrifice I had to make. So my standards are definitely higher now. I'm running multiple times a week. I'm in the gym 4 times a week at least. So I think the standards do get higher across the board, and I think something you'll really notice is your standards in the workplaces becomes higher. The standard of, we kind of spoke about this, of the people that are around you needs to become higher as well to grow with you. So yeah, I guess it's like you're interviewing me. It's interesting though. Yeah, how do you feel about all that?
Definitely agree. The social circle element has been challenging because I think in the initial stages, pretty much everyone has to go.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the people I know have been conducive to build the life I currently have.
Yeah.
If I want a different life, I have to distance myself. And some people can manage that balance of holding on to old friends and people that they know.
Yeah.
For me, that's very difficult. When I change, I need to make it absolute everything. It's like my mind now. I'm basically a different person. I like completely change my identity every 6 months or so. And when I was dating my ex, it was a nightmare for her because I would be like a pendulum. Like you never know who you were gonna wake up to, right? It's
Yeah.
like I have now completely done a 180 on this very strong opinion I had a week ago because I've thought about it and I realized this is the right way. But I kind of enjoy it, because it's like I feel like I'm getting closer to something. It's like
Yeah.
you think and you think and you think and you're like, all right, now I think I know the truth. And you keep going, right? And you're like, all right, now I've learned some new lessons. I took in some new info. And now I think I definitely know the truth. Discard everything I previously said. Now it's definitely this time. And that cycle just repeats over and over. And yeah, that's the process I'm kind of currently on, where I'm always like, all right, this is the current iteration I'm going through of rebuilding myself. It's probably going to have to change several times. And in the process, I'm probably going to have to let everything around me go. I've noticed that's probably one of the biggest things people struggle with when they're making changes is how willing they are to let go of the people that have constructed their current reality. That's a really tough one for people to move on from.
Do you fear, and fear probably isn't even the correct wording, but do you struggle with the judgments of what people close to you will say and think?
I think it's I mean you'll probably notice, right? You have to change so much to be able to do what we do, right?
Yeah.
It's so demanding and it forces you to adapt and constantly change. And someone might know you as Mike the construction guy, right? And for them to kind of remap that image of you is a lot of work. You got to spend a lot of time with them as the new Mike. You got to explain to them why you're not the same guy that they used to know. And for me, that's not worth it, right? Especially because it's so frequent. So there's very few people who are going to understand this process. They can be like, all right, Abraham's doing this thing where he's constantly changing. He's running this business. His life is kind of chaotic. And I should expect it to be turbulent and volatile. Very few people understand that. They'll think, hold on, you don't seem the same as I last saw you. What's going on there? Because realistically, people don't change, right? That's what keeps most social circles together. It's the familiarity of people that you know really well who have the same opinions, and that you're like, I know exactly what this person thinks and feels, and that's what I'm going to get from them. That familiarity, that comfort.
But if these people were able to accept your changes and opinions, do you think it would be easier to stay connected with them?
I'm gonna put it back onto myself and say I actually don't like being around people who are not growth oriented, right? Because everyone has things in their life that they're unhappy about or that they would like to change and improve.
Yeah.
And if you're not making active efforts to go towards that, I don't know, I don't really want to be around that, because then you're just wallowing. You're just accepting your current situation, and that defeatist attitude, I feel like it is draining.
I think when you accept where you're at, you start going backwards. If you look at people that are in regular jobs, not getting paid a lot, just regular, everything is crushing them. Economy, inflation, they can't keep up. The interest rates go up. Whatever it is, they're being crushed. So their wage might stay the same, but in reality, every day that goes by and the money sits in the bank and does nothing, they're losing. Whereas that's and the money's just being printed, literally being printed.
Yep.
So if you get even those savings, look, not everyone's going to be like us. That's just a reality. Not everyone's going to have this insane drive to want this over everything else and to be willing to change and sacrifice their own mental everything for it. But people can still live a relatively normal life, but be more than they currently are, even if they've just that little bit of drive, that little bit of I want a small bit more for myself and my family. They can invest. It's so easy to do that now, right? Not only in just say things like stocks, right, or property, whatever. These are things that people can invest in to a certain extent relatively easily, but they can also invest in their own mindset and their own challenges that they need to overcome. So, but people just don't do this. It's crazy to me when I see someone just settle, and it's very like what you're saying. I don't get it. I don't, and that's I was comfortable with that at one period of my life. I was comfortable with making the 40, 50K if I did it 60 hours a week because of overtime a year. That wouldn't even buy me a house in Ireland, first of all. And I was comfortable with that, which is, it sounds insane. But something clicked, thankfully, something clicked and kind of grew this mindset. So people can change to a certain extent, but I think it was also ingrained into me from a young age due to reasons.
I actually so sometimes there's around Manchester, like homeless guys like sleeping on the streets, right? And I'll see these guys and I think, if you did, like, I actually think sometimes maybe I should take this guy in. I bet I could completely turn him around. And I think if this guy did exactly what I told him to for a month, I bet I could completely change his life. You would just have to obsessively, like robotically, listen to every single thing I told him to do, whether it's eat, exercise, fix his CV, job applications. I would get him an employed, well-being, contributing citizen to society.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the steps to fix that guy's life, right, or to get him from homeless to living in city center, high-rise apartment in Manchester are very, very obvious. They're clear, right? I can tell him exactly what to do, and I can say with 99% accuracy, I will get him there, right? Amazing. Now I think, right, what about for me, right? Who can see where I am right now and tell me with 99% certainty, just do these things, and you get to that next stage. And I feel like there's always that level where you're like, you've mastered a certain process or getting to a certain point, and the grind, the real challenge comes in trying to get to that next point, but there's always someone who's there. And this is where obviously coaching like this is paramount, because you've already done this. And if I just follow through with your guidance, the things that I need to do, I can get to that point. It seems really stark because the change from homelessness to high-rise apartment is massive.
Yeah.
But the changes from here are probably less drastic.
True. It's a good point. I think about that as well when I see, say, homeless. I'm like, in my head, you could have a regular job and still be able to rent, let's say it's a one bed or a studio, something like that. And an okayish place.
An improvement on your
Yeah.
current situation, essentially.
Yeah, but what keeps them there? Is it lack of belief? Is it lack of want? Is it external pressures? I know, say, substances might be well, it is a big issue. So how do you help people that can you help people that don't want to be helped? Can you get
That's
them to
it,
see
right?
the other side?
Yeah, I have these conversations with people where from the outside it looks obvious like what the problem is, right? Where you're like, leave that relationship, quit that job, or whatever decision that seems so obvious to the outsider, but for some reason internally you don't want to deal with the risk, you don't want to deal with the uncertainty, and it's tough to make. And I wonder, I try and turn that mirror back on myself, where I'm like, someone on the outside looking in, what would they say, Ibrahim? This is so obvious. You need to do this right now, and that
Mm.
I'm avoiding.
How do you take advice, or do you take advice from people that you in your head define as lesser than you? And I don't say that in a
No, I know exactly what you mean,
yeah,
and in a derogatory term, right? Like, no,
yeah.
it's not a ranking. I mean, technically, we are trying to win here, but
Yeah.
we won't count that. But my general rule for advice is if they don't have something that I want, I'm not interested in what they
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
right?
Very,
Otherwise,
very simple.
it's just conjecture, right? I could also some random homeless guy could tell me the exact same thing. It has no difference in credibility. People are
There's
so generous in their advice. It's amazing.
yeah, that's so
Especially when you're
true.
starting out, right? It's because you haven't done anything to prove that you know more than they do. And so everyone's a fucking genius. Like you're
Yeah.
starting out business and everyone's got advice. They're like, you should do this, you should do this. And I think, what evidence do you have to support anything that you say?
Yeah. That's it. There's a song I just brought it up there. It's a I don't know what kind of music you listen to, but it's a kind of a rap song by Dave and Jack Harlow, and it's called "Stop Giving Me Advice." And
Hmm.
whether you care about rap music, whatever type of music you listen to, if you literally just read the lyrics of this, it hits me in a spot because everyone seems to give advice. Everyone. And it's so easy as you said, but it's you have to really filter it in your own mind. And this song talks about like you haven't been here, here, and here, dealt with this, this, and this. Well, how can you even give me advice on it?
Yeah.
I highly recommend just even listen, just read it. Even stop giving me advice.
I'm conscious of doing it myself as well, right? Like if somebody wants
Mm,
like relationships, for example, unless you've been married successfully for like
yeah,
3 decades, I don't want to hear anything you've got to say
yeah,
about it. So I try and think like if somebody's asking me for advice, I don't want to just spout off my opinion from my own lens, right? Instead, what I try and do is I ask questions, right? I ask questions so that they can figure the answer out for themselves, things that they might not have considered. Because ultimately, I think most people know what to do, they just haven't been led to it.
mm,
And
yeah.
that's my kind of reframing to say, don't give advice, just ask a question that they will not have considered. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? What about this, right? That tends to reframe it a little better.
Let them come to their own conclusion then based off.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good way of doing it. I think most people probably can't do that though. Most people, and this is the ordinary person, right? They'll go on and on and on. Oh, you should leave this person. You should do this. You should do that. And in reality, if you follow their advice, most of the time you'll probably be miserable. So, and I think you're the only person that can live with your own decisions. And I often look at this. I heard Iman Ghazi say something very similar as well recently on a video. Was that if when you're thinking about making a decision, a big decision, and you look at the worst case outcome and the best case outcome, if you can deal and live with the worst, if it goes all wrong, but you can still accept that, then you can make that decision to go ahead with it, right? Because the upside potential is whatever it might be based on that decision. So, and he was basically saying, if it all went away tomorrow, like he can accept that, he can live with that. So he'll take the risk on a lot of things compared to the ordinary person. And I think that's a big piece of you, me, entrepreneurs in general, people that want more, is risk. I wouldn't consider myself a big risk taker, but if I look at myself compared to the ordinary person that's in a job, stable job, whatever, has a family, I'm very risky. And I think you are too. Would you consider yourself a risk taker?
I'm a massive risk taker, like to my detriment in definitely lots of situations. So I it's unusual in your case, Mike, to be taking risks in one thing and not another. People usually work in in patterns, so maybe you haven't identified the other areas where you're taking risks just yet.
Interesting. Interesting. How do we identify that?
I take risks all the time, and I have to work on the other side of like becoming a bit more deliberate about the risks I take. Because the thing you were saying, like with that Iman Gadzhi example. So think about the downside, and if you can deal with that. This is like a common financial philosophy called truncated downside and unlimited upside,
Mm.
right? And that's what a lot of entrepreneurship is, right? Your downside is you lose some money and it doesn't work, and the upside is unlimited.
Yeah.
And most of the risks that people avoid taking are exactly those: very limited downside and unlimited upside. And the idea is you want to expose yourself to as many of those kind of decisions as possible, where the downside is limited, but the upside is unlimited. And statistically speaking, at least some of those decisions will have massive outweighed returns on the risk that you took.
Interesting. Yeah, when I look at it, say stocks, for example, this is just how I can relate it to my life. If I've maybe, well, at the peak, I had maybe 20 stocks holding that many. And I would say five of them lost quite a substantial amount of money. But the other 15, give or take, have given me 10x the returns. So, well, not 10x, but 2, 3x. So that risk there is clearly worth it. And if you can apply that to other areas in life, I think you can win. And if you swing enough, you'll definitely win.
Is that this is how you should this is how you should justify it to your girlfriend that you need to get at least 2 more girlfriends.
I'll let you to that.
Like, I'm just managing my downside, babe. You gotta understand here.
I'm trying to justify having more cars, not to mind girlfriends. The cars are enough to deal with. But yeah, like that's really the way it is. So, and a lot of people they just don't even go to this length to even think about these things. You go to the extreme length.
Oh man, like I basically I do experiments on myself all the time just to see what happens, right?
Yeah.
And I had this. I'll give you like a kind of an unrelated story though, and it's like I had this stomach infection a while ago, and this thing just would not go. I went to like 2 rounds of antibiotics, didn't clear. So then I was doing some research, and I saw this like experimental study, and it was like you can starve out the bacteria if you just eliminate all food. The downside is obviously you don't eat food. You have to eat just like branched chain amino acids, some maltodextrin, and coconut oil. Basically, like the base form of carbs, proteins, and fat.
Mm.
Right. So it's like you do this, and it'll starve out the bacteria, and then you'll be fine. The only downside is you lose a fuck ton of body weight, and it's really tough to starve yourself like this willingly.
Yeah.
I did that for a week, and that was one of the toughest things ever. Sometimes I'd be in bed and I'd be like close to passing out, and I was like, I need some food, and I'd have to crawl to the kitchen and like try and scoop some like this powder into my mouth
Wow.
before I passed out. By the end of it, I cleared it, and it was like my entire digestive system had been reset, and I felt fucking amazing.
So it's worth the pain in the end. Yeah.
It was 100% worth it, but like that's the extent to which I will just do shit to see what happens.
Do you Okay, you mentally put yourself through challenges. Do you physically do the same?
Yeah, I mean, I'm mixing things up. Like I've been pumping weights for a long time, so
Yeah.
that's getting a little bit repetitive, right? You know, like once you do something long enough, you start to feel less of a struggle from it. So I mixed that up by starting yoga. Now you might think like yoga, that's nothing, but I'll walk out of some of these classes sweating more than I've ever sweat in a gym workout.
Yeah.
Some of these poses are so crazy difficult, and they're utilizing muscles that you didn't even think existed.
Yeah.
Right? You're balancing on one foot, your hands in the air, and you're like your entire body's basically like shaking and
Mm.
screaming at you like what is going on. So I do stuff like that, and I think of it as increasing your range, right? You don't just want to be a gym bro who pumps weights. You want to have the flexibility, the mobility, you want to have the athleticism, the speed and stamina. And I think that mentality applies to cognitive load as well. You don't just want to be a um a guy who does Facebook ads or
Yeah.
someone who does ecom, right? The the term is, and this is what I'm actually gonna this is gonna be a a watershed moment, Mike. This is what I'm using as the name for the program, which is Renaissance, a
Mm.
Renaissance man. And it came about in like the 18th century at the turn of the Renaissance, where men were no longer just a blacksmith or an archer or like one profession. They had the education and access to resources to become Renaissance men who were learned in arts, poetry, music, history. And I
Mm.
think the idea is today you have to be a modern Renaissance man, someone who is adept in a multitude of fields. He's an athlete, he's an artist, he's a creator.
Yeah.
All of those things need to apply.
I completely agree. It actually reminded me of a point I thought of earlier was most people are let's take it this way. If someone's a 9 or 10 out of 10 in physique, a lot of the time they're like a 2 when it comes to financial or business or relationship. They have fantastic 9 out of 10 relationship and then they've no money, right? There's a lot of this where you're good at one thing and you're crap at everything else, I find. But I
Yeah,
always
definitely.
try to put myself to a level where I'm about a 7 out of 10 across the board. And
Oh
that,
yeah.
yeah, that came from
How's your
watching.
karaoke voice, Mike? This is what I want to know.
Don't put me there. Don't put me there. But that came from watching First Man. And it was not about being exceptional in one area, it was being pretty exceptional in every area. Like better than most people in every area. So when I tried to do that and accomplish that, I found my whole life was elevated. Like I'm not there's no way my physique is a 10 out of 10 at all. But
9 out of 10, easy, Mike.
yeah,
Don't be
at
modest.
least
9.5 on a good
at least.
day.
But my fitness and all that is probably it might be a little bit higher, but give or take, it's a 7 out of 10. My business, again, it might be higher, lower, but if we take it across the board, 7 out of 10. That's what I try and aim for across the board. But I do think there are seasons,
That's it.
and I
Yeah.
always think this seasons where you take 3, 4, 5 months and you're all in on business, you scale it to the next level. And then the next 3, 4, 5 months are fitness and things like that. That's something I've noticed myself naturally doing and naturally wanting because I think you achieve something, you get a little bit comfortable, let it settle, and then go back to it again to grow it further. That's just the way I tend to operate essentially.
No, fully agree. I'm curious, what do you think at the moment needs most work? Is it the business?
Right now it's business season, for sure. I'm trying to balance it with fitness though. Trying.
Yeah, I noticed you're doing a lot of like gym, run, swim.
Yeah, definitely. I want to get into fighting because I want to. I watched the Joe Rogan Mark Zuckerberg podcast there recently, and Joe was essentially saying like you feel different when you can walk down the street and know you're capable of doing damage, right, and defending yourself. And I want to. get to that standard where, like, my girlfriend's father is a perfect example of this. He's a bodybuilder. He's a massive dude, but he's very capable. He was in the Navy, very capable of defending himself and his family. And there's an instant respect there from not only the family, but from everyone that sees him. And I don't want to be bodybuilder size, right? I just want to know that going down the street, if things pop off, I'm good and my family's safe. So I think there's a power in that, and I want to do that.
What if people didn't take the fight to begin with because you were so massive?
There's that too. That's what he has. That's the power he has. He doesn't even need to do anything. Um, it's true, but I want to be functional. I like being
Yeah.
agile. I said it to a friend of mine last year when I did my half marathon. Around that period, I said, if anything goes up, and maybe this is, I probably wouldn't think this way if I lived in Beverly Hills, but if anything pops off, I can just run. I'm good. Nobody's catching me. I guarantee it.
You got the stamina to outrun anybody.
Exactly. And there's a power in knowing that. It's weird.
Yeah.
But now I want to face it and deal with it.
Okay, this is cool. Then I'm curious to know what the next progression of this is. Mike's on the street looking for fights now.
Yeah. I'm coming over to Manny and just start.
This is a wonderful
there behind me,
evolution. Yeah, Mike started marathon running from fights. Then he went to ready for a fight, and then he went to actively looking for fights.
And you're doing yoga in the penthouse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's to me it's definitely a scary thing to do though, to face. I did some jiu-jitsu before and I enjoyed it, but I want to do kickboxing. And yeah, have you ever thought of fighting anything like that?
Mate, it's been on the top of my list. As soon as my back gets fixed,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fully commit to it. That's basically the number one thing holding me back. It's and for exactly the same reason that you said, it's knowing that you have the capability to defend yourself. For me, I probably lean a little bit more on the side of having the presence to avoid conflict,
Mhm.
because I think most confrontations are not violent, luckily,
Yeah.
but I think your physicality definitely plays a part in how you come across. So I think being deliberate about how you construct that is a wise move if you want to be more capable and impactful in the interactions you have with people.
Yes. So to give you more context of my physical character, I'm pretty much 6 foot. I'm 6 foot, okay?
Clip that again. Mike's podcast is
I'm
just
the-
I'm a 9 out of 10. I'm 6 foot. Best business podcast ever.
on a good day in the morning, I'm 6 foot. Okay, that's my claim. But yeah, no, I'm about 6 foot, right? And in my heaviest was 89 kg, I think. And
That's beefy.
at at that point, I was strong, man. I was strong without a doubt. But when I would walk around a busy place, I could walk through it. But because I was literally beefy, I was Irish meat, homegrown, I had to cut, right? But I went down to about 70 kg.
Oh
About
shit. That must have been lean
about
for you.
that. That was extremely light. And when I went out, especially when you're in busy places in the city, people would bump into me, not care. People would barely acknowledge me. And that was a problem. So I'd rather
Like,
have a little
Big
bit
Mike
of,
is here. I need to be
there you go.
respected.
There you go. It's interesting, isn't it, though, how all that is?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think it's a good idea to have that physical presence, because nobody's taking the time to physically like look you up and down and develop a measured response to how they should judge you. They take a glancing pass at you, and they're like, "All right, that's it. Is he big? Does he look threatening? That's about it."
Yeah. Yeah. That's
If you went skinhead, Mike, that could really work. If you went up to like 90 kilos skinhead, nobody would fuck with you.
I've been debating it. I
Yeah.
have, because as you can see, my hairline is tragic. I don't want to go the Turkey trip yet. I've been there,
hmm
but I don't want to do the job yet. I've thought of it. I've considered it.
What's
Uh,
stopping you from doing it?
That's a good question. Uh,
To give you some context, I'm definitely looking at all sorts of whatever cosmetic treatments it takes for me to maintain this look. I'm budgeting for that.
really?
Absolutely. It would be foolish of me to assume that appearance doesn't matter, especially in the line of business we're in,
Yeah,
where
it does.
content is so important and the presentation you have is so key. Now, am I saying I can't make it work without it? Potentially, but if I have the access to the resources to prolong this current appearance, then I think like why not?
It's a great point. And I think people, and
Could you
it
get labeled as vain? But hey,
yeah,
if looking good for the next 3 decades makes me vain, then I'll happily wear that badge every
yeah,
day.
so be it. Yeah, so be it, for sure. But let's say there's two angles you can look at this, right? If I went bald, if I just shaved the hair, and this is a genuine question, would people be not afraid, but would people be more reserved and not willing to buy into me as a person and trust more than, or yeah, would they just not be willing compared to the way I am now? Or would it make
So
me look more serious?
the point is neither of us can know the answer to that, right?
Mm,
Like it's illogical for us to either to say it would be one or the other. So the way I like to think about it is, let's say you went bald, right? Are there people who are currently bald who make content who are really successful?
yeah.
Obviously, there's probably countless who are massively successful, and it's a part of their personality. Does that mean it's feasible for Mike to also do the same thing?
I mean,
Obviously.
yeah, I guess
Yes.
so. Yeah,
Yes. Obviously, yeah. There is nothing fundamentally different, right?
yeah.
Like if you're looking at being bald as the limiting factor, well, we've disproven that because there are people who are already bald who can do what you do. And not just what you do, but at a much higher level, right? In terms of their reach and followers. So to assume that it's the barrier would logically make no sense there. Because
Mm.
otherwise no one would be a popular content creator who is bald if your theory held up.
Sales go down, business fails.
Like Ibrahim, I thought you said
I'm
this would
blaming
work.
you.
I actually think it would work, mate. I say go for it, fully commit. Because you're in the middle ground at the moment. This is the place you don't want to be in.
It's tragic right now. It's scary. It's worse
Mate,
than anything.
fucking commit. People will respect you for it. They're like,
That
Mike
is
did
funny.
did what he had to.
True, true. I need a before and after. Ah, it's
And then
funny.
you can turn it into a story.
True, true.
Great
But
content, mate.
man goes bald and business fails. Back to his job. Hair never grew back. Yeah, no, it's true though. It's interesting, and I know this is your whole thing. Is well, I mean, it's a part of your thing is mindset, and I think helping people conquer those limiting beliefs as well, and that's all it is, right? And you do a really good job, I would say, from the limited time that we know each other. You seem to do a very good job of conquering your own limiting beliefs without external factors, just taking control.
Man, it's tough. I don't
Yeah,
even like sometimes I don't even know what limiting beliefs I've got. Um, for a long time, it was around what I thought was possible because of
yeah,
my environment, right? Because I think we touched on this before, which is you think something is possible, but you've no proof to suggest that it is. You
yeah.
think there's a lifestyle that you want to aim for, a relationship towards money, towards the things that you do in your career that, again, you've never really seen. You've heard about it, maybe you've seen online, but none of that's really manifested in real life. So a lot of it is just delusion. I
Mm,
think that's the part that I struggle with is not knowing where I'm sounding too crazy.
mm,
Because occasionally I'll be like, is this possible? Maybe it is. I guess I'll try it. And then thinking, Ibrahim, that was stupid. Why did you do that?
Yeah.
It's like goes in the other direction now.
Yeah. Do you think being in a city like Manchester, which is, I mean, in our part of the world, it's pretty, well, there's a mix of classes, right? But it's pretty privileged when you're in the city
Definitely,
setting.
for sure. Yeah.
Do you think that motivates you or just shows you what's possible?
It works works in both ways.
Yeah.
You see, because the variance is huge, right? In a
Yeah.
city like Manchester, you have
Yeah.
people on the poverty line in council housing doing terribly. Then you have fucking a Lamborghini Urus driving past every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And so that disparity is massive.
Mm.
But then I think when you're this close to people, now I'm probably somewhere in the middle there, maybe
Yeah.
a little bit closer towards the higher end. But when you're this close to people who are doing much better than you, I think my thinking is this person is not really that different from me. Because I think in our eyes, in our minds, we kind of idolize, not maybe, but like we elevate them to a place that we think, oh, they're completely different. All
Mhm.
this thing, right? But I look at it as this thing is so close to me that I'm no different. I just don't know what it takes to get there yet. And this comes back to that knowledge thing where I'm at this level, but I can see how close it is. I can see that's feasible what this person's doing. And I think, all right, so it looks like this person's not any smarter or
Yeah.
better than me. They just have access to maybe more resources or knowledge that I don't yet have. So it makes it so much more feasible. That's why I think that environment element is so important. Even if you don't have it physically, you cultivate it digitally.
Correct. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. When I was in Manchester last, actually, my the two last times I was there, well, actually, maybe I've only been there twice, 2, 3 times, but two things stood out to me. I'll say the first time was I was in a beautiful restaurant. We were having dinner, and it was pretty bougie, right? But there was a Lamborghini Urus was parked outside, and I spotted it. I was like, oh man, that person is probably in here. In reality, he blends in with everybody, but he still, at the end of the night, goes out to that car and drives to probably some high-rise apartment or some nice house in the suburbs. Whereas I'm walking back to the apartment, to the apartment. So to me, I was saying in my head, like, this is so close. Like we're so privileged, man. We could be in, like, when I was in parts of Thailand, like, you're not even seeing a Mercedes. Like, it's just not happening. It's just extreme poverty in certain places. So the fact we're so close to it and we can actually see it every day, I think makes it feel like it's more real, it's possible. Like with my i8 going around in Cork in Ireland, like, there's just no other car. Like, rarely you'd see a car like it or even nicer, and they're not even worth that much in reality compared to the Lambos and stuff. So I think being around it is really important. And the last time I was there, I mentioned it to you before. I went for a big run around the city, and it was fascinating seeing the high-rise apartments. A lot of people think about, oh, who's going to live in there? I was thinking about who the hell is building this.
I look at that's it. I look at the names of the construction companies and I think, what does it take to get these kind of contracts? I wonder how much that tower is worth. Can I buy that one day? That's my thinking.
Endless millions, endless.
Right.
So it's interesting
You
because
see the wealth everywhere, right?
yeah,
Like you're like, I see people making money. I think that's the difference in mindset that happens when you go to this entrepreneurial path is you look at people making money, you think, fuck, that's a great idea. You think like that concrete pouring tank, you think, I wonder what the rates are on that. Like all this stuff. That's what my mind is going through when I walk
yeah,
around town now. And it's so abundant. I think when in the past, when I was far less sophisticated, I wouldn't even recognize it, or I saw, oh, it's like my level of understanding of something was so two-dimensional. But now it's like I think beyond that, and I think I wonder how they get contracts for this, or I wonder what it must be so expensive to have someone standing there all day doing that. I wonder if there's a better way of doing that. That's how my mind works now.
yeah, yeah, completely. There's actually two guys in my city that I know have Lambos. One guy owns a trucking company, and you'd probably see him in his truck. I actually believe he still drives them for some reason. Um, but you'd probably see him in the truck and think he's only making what 40, 50 grand a year basic. But then when he goes home, he's
We're
gone.
talking like a lorry, like a 16
Yeah, yeah,
wheeler.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there's another guy. He's actually a billionaire. I believe he might be the only billionaire in we have counties. We call them Cork. And now they're on English plates because English cars are so much cheaper than Irish. But he has, last time I was down there, he had a Urus and a Bentley, I believe. Bentley, the Jeep, the Bentayga. And I was just fascinated. Like, this guy is just operating on a different level. Different completely. I guarantee he doesn't even think the same way I do, day to day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need to change. We need to adapt. And everyone watching this needs to as well to grow to that next level.
Because I think the extreme end of this is you and I have access to the internet, which is no different to someone in an underdeveloped country, right?
Yeah.
But why is it so much more likely for someone, let's say in the West, to set up an online business and succeed compared to someone living in like rural India, right? You both
Yeah.
have access to the internet and the phone, but one is so much more likely to make something of it.
Yeah.
And I figured it's got to be environment, it's got to be thinking and culture and what you believe is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sad in a way though, because some people really, really let themselves limit everything they do because of that. I've a lot of people from these third world countries that say, "Oh, I'm from XYZ. Can I still do this?" I'm like, "Bro, of course you can. Why couldn't you? You've internet and a
Yeah,
laptop. You're
I know.
privileged, right?"
That's it.
And it's great to be able to. Brilliance is one example, like from Nigeria. Like Nigeria is not a rich, well, in some ways it is, but it's not known to be a rich, privileged country, right? But he's done an absolutely amazing job to get himself literally to the top 1%, beyond it, probably even more. And it shows. It's just put in the work day after day, be obsessed. He absolutely is obsessed. And it really, from talking to him for an hour and a half last week, it really proved to me that is one of the big things. And it's the same talking to you. It seems like an obsession. It's like it's pretty much all you think about, right?
Yeah, it's I think it helps that you eliminate everything else. So much of modern society is designed to fracture your attention and get you to do things that are very short term, quick dopamine releasing activities.
Yeah.
And so the more you can get rid of, the easier it is to cultivate what goes into your head. That's what I've been trying to do. So no social media. I've been trying to get rid of all kind of entertainment. I actually think if you're poor, entertainment is like your number one enemy, right? It just keeps you so stagnant, and it probably feeds ideas that are very destructive to you being able to break out of that place.
Yeah.
Because that's what Hollywood is, right? It's essentially just feeding in the same crap that everyone else believes. And that's the direct opposite of what you probably need to break out of it.
Yeah. Completely. Completely agree. Like that's the thing. I do believe you have to cut off all these distractions when you're building something great, even to a point where you've like for me, I have to make sure I'm not gaming things like that and not distracted with all these things to get to the next level. Like an hour or two of your day distracted by these things is it's a big loss. Like add that up, it's crazy. So yeah, it's important to always have that cut out best possible. I do believe you need some downtime, but I think trying to implement that with sports, fitness is probably your best way. Networking as well is probably your best way to enjoy that downtime.
Absolutely. I'm curious, Mike, what's your big challenge for this week?
Big challenge for this week is that's interesting. I haven't even thought of it, to be honest. It's just to keep pushing, man. Like it's pretty much the same things day after day, but it's getting yourself to consistently do that every day is the challenge. because you're not always motivated. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline can stay. So that's my big thing. What about you? What's your biggest thing this week?
I got to start recording more content.
Yeah.
So I think I'm in that hurdle of getting comfortable with recording and speaking on camera. So I need to start doing the reps to get familiar with it. I've been thinking like I can do some things with zero effort. So exercise is one of these. I feel like I've basically conquered that. I will go to the gym. I ran the numbers one time, and it's like 99% of the year, of the days in the year, I will be at the gym.
Wow.
That's like the level of accuracy I have with it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I can do that for this, I should be able to apply it to other areas as well. I just need to think about how did I end up getting that, and how can I then apply it to other areas? Because it'd be amazing if every day I was like, there is no chance I won't do work. Because that's what I think about the gym, right? I was like, it's not even a question I have to think about. It's like today I will exercise. That's it, every single day. And I wonder what it will take to get that mindset for other things that I should be doing in life. And I think that the tricky thing with businesses, things change so often. Whereas the gym, the weights are always the same. The machines don't change. I go in, I do my routine, and it's very predictable. And this is going to be a nice controversial opinion for you, Mike, that you can clip. Is that I believe that the gym is not a real arena, right? And a lot of people that go to the gym use it as an end all for their energy, right? They think I'm going to commit this time to the gym with no real application for this discipline, this efficiency, this work ethic. And for them, getting beefy, getting stronger, whatever it is the goal in and of itself. But it's only because you're unwilling to deal with the risk that comes with taking on a challenge outside of the gym, because that has actual chance for loss. Gym, sure, you might try a lift occasionally that doesn't go up, but for the most part, it's zero risk. You go in there, you pump the weights, and you gradually get better indefinitely. And I see a lot of guys, especially when they go down the gym bro route, which is I'll just continue to pump weights forever, get bigger, and avoid dealing with the risk that comes with taking on challenges in the real world, where there's a chance for loss and uncertainty. And the example for this is when you see, like, you might think, oh, but the progress you make in the gym transfers to other aspects of your life. But I actually think that's also not true. To some extent, sure, in the beginning. But if that was true, then all the guys on Muscle Beach would be running the country, right? All the beefy jack dudes would be running CEOs, they'd be writing legislation, but that's also not the case, right? It is a very sanitized environment where you can demonstrate work ethic and discipline, but for the most part, it doesn't show your commitment to being able to deal with risk and uncertainty.
Ooh. That's a really interesting take. I doubt many people have thought of. And it made you see my reaction to that.
Yeah, because like it's so easy to funnel your time and energy endlessly into the gym and assume you're making progress. But to what end? You get bigger, you get stronger, so what? This is not a real game, right? There needs to be a chance of you losing, of some stakes on the line where failure is an option. That's a real game. So the gym is only ever a training ground. It's not the real arena. The real arena is life itself, where you put yourself out there, there's a chance for you to lose, and then you get up and you try again.
Like fighting, business.
Absolutely, right? That's all it is.
Much
It's
bigger
just
challenge.
too many people get caught up in the loop of thinking that's it, I'll just continue to exercise and work out, and hopefully that's going to demonstrate some fulfillment. But I think that's a cop out, and it's usually the people who do have really good potential that go down this route, because you do have to be like, to get to the top tiers of fitness, you have to be disciplined, you have to have the great work ethic. But I think it's misplaced energy and it's untapped potential, because that same person could be doing so much more, but their unwillingness to embrace risk and uncertainty and the fear of loss stops them from allocating that energy towards something more meaningful, and that has a real impact.
Flip it. What about people that compete competitively?
Yeah.
in fitness?
Yeah, I mean, that's a different one, right? Because the end goal is to win, to triumph, and because you can lose in competition.
Yeah.
That's the real difference. But for most people, you're not competing at the gym. You're just doing it for your own sake. It's a very, very small percentage that compete. And I got respect for people that compete because you do have to go against other people and the chance for failure arises, right? Because something is out of your control. So that one, I will give you that. But for the most part, um, I I used to respect gym goers, but now my perspective has shifted. Now I think, what are you avoiding? What is this a cope for?
If you think the opposite
And I just want
way,
to
go
caveat
on.
that, Mike, sorry, with saying this is only from personal experience because this is exactly what I did. Right? I basically went ham at the gym thinking I'll just dominate
Yeah.
in the fitness category, and then my life will be great. But it wasn't like that because I was like, I could be doing so much more, especially cognitively. Like my mind isn't really being used. Once you get to a certain level, you're basically just a robot at the gym. You pump the weights, you follow the right motions, and you will get bigger. You eat the right things. It's very robotic and intellectually unengaged.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, I definitely think about stuff more than is required for me to build muscle.
Yeah.
And that is untapped potential I'm feeling unfulfilled by. So this is coming from experience.
You're on autopilot essentially.
Yeah,
And that's it.
definitely.
Yeah. Wow. Ooh. This has been a an enlightful, interesting hour, probably nearly 2 hours, nearly 2 hours.
That was stochastic. We rambled on a lot of different things. We can clip this, and I think you're gonna struggle to find a title for this one, Mike.
Yeah, I believe so. Crazy guy leaves stable job.
Shaves his head and goes back to construction.
No, this look, I enjoy just talking to you even off camera. It's just to get deeper into that mindset, I think is very interesting. Something that stood out to me in this past 2 hours is and you mentioned it once, is your ability to question and just asking the right questions that make people think. So I think that's something you need to put out there a bit more as well. And I know you're only in the beginning of your journey of putting your personal brand out there online, but that's something I noticed that you just ask questions that most people wouldn't. So I think that's a strong point that you have. But you're
Awesome.
also able
No,
to
I
answer
appreciate
them,
it.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you
Enjoyed
on
this.
here. Didn't even feel like it was recording anything. It was just steady, right?
Next time I want to flip it and I can interview you. I want to get really personal. I think
Yeah.
people are gonna like this.
Yeah, I'd be afraid of some of the
We're gonna.
questions you'll have.
Oh man, that's the kind of shit I really like is
Yeah.
to get personal and I'll do this deliberately with people I've just met in real life, where I'm like, I kind of like watching someone squirm trying to
Yeah.
come up with an answer. It's like the ultimate game. Definitely don't clip this part. This is gonna make me look like a psychopath.
No, it's good. It's good to have that. I think it's good to be put under pressure and your true thoughts and beliefs come out as well. I think that's all important. But Ibrahim, it's been an absolute pleasure. What I'll do is I will, for anyone watching this, his socials will be plastered all over this in the
Where do you post this?
description, whatever, Twitter, YouTube, and I think we'll have to pull a few clips from this to be honest. But you can do the exact same. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, bro. I think
Awesome, Mike. Really enjoyed this.
we'll probably have another one at some point, I believe.
I
I
got
think
plenty of other crazy ideas. I
yeah,
think your audience will
I think
enjoy.
we can go even deeper for sure, for sure. But for now, thank you, man, for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Amazing. Take care, Mike.